Well, what's up again, guys? Brian here, the Three Topics Gamer, here to share with you another movie review, as I'll be giving you just my initial thoughts on the newest Ghostbusters film, this one being titled Ghostbusters Afterlife. Now, I just got back from the theater, and I can say just right off the bat, I had a great time watching this film. Completely ignoring that 2016 reboot or whatever they were trying to do with that film. This is, in my opinion, the closest thing that we will get to a true Ghostbusters 3 film that takes place or follows the events of the first two original Ghostbusters films. And I think it does a great job of respecting those first two films, especially the first film, while building the foundation of building its own story to move forward. Now, without going into too many spoilers, I'll say this much. This movie was directed, surprisingly, by Jason Reitman, and the cast was a pretty standard cast starring actors like Carrie Coon, Finn Wolfhard, and Paul Rudd. Now, without getting into too many spoilers, this definitely takes place several decades after the events of, say, the second film, even though it's hardly mentioned in this film. And it mainly follows Egon, as you know, eventually the Ghostbusters kind of broke up, and he went off to go move to a little small town. And at the very beginning, this is kind of a spoiler, but he ends up dying. And when he dies, all of his property and all of his everything he owns goes to his distant family, which is pretty much surrounded around his daughter and his grandson and granddaughter. Now, when they move to this little town, it's not long before a lot of crazy things start happening. His granddaughter, Phoebe, happens to find out that her grandfather was a Ghostbuster and that he actually moved to this small town for a reason. And she basically manages to work alongside a few other individuals in order to find out exactly what her grandfather was trying to do and complete the work that he started and hopefully stop the apocalypse from happening. Now, I can say this film is not entirely flawless, and there are some problems, but I think anyone who is a fan of those first two films is going to have a blast with this film overall. I didn't enjoy it as much as, say, the first film, and to an extent maybe the second film, but I think that this film does a phenomenal job of actually trying to tell an interesting story that has a lot more heart than I was expecting. I did not expect to enjoy it this much. Now, I'm just going to go over the primary things that I didn't like about this film, because there are three main flaws that I had with it. The first one is that I think that because this film is a little over 2 hours long, it takes a bit too long for things to get going. Believe it or not, this film is actually about 20 minutes longer than the original Ghostbusters film, and because of that, it seems to stretch things out longer than it has to. And I just wish that there were some plot points that they introduced in this film that don't really go anywhere. And I think if you had taken those story elements out, it would have been a much more better flowing film. The next thing that I didn't like about this film is I don't think it had a very strong cast. Out of the main lead, Phoebe, the other characters aren't really given much to do. They don't get any character development at all. And if anything, they act more as utility characters. They are simply there to operate a function instead of being a part of the plot that drives it forward. Outside of Phoebe, who, trust me, she is pretty much the actress who plays Phoebe is carrying this entire film, and she's really good from beginning to end. But the other characters around her are just there to operate other things that she can't operate because she's only one person. So you need one character to drive the Ecto One. You need one character to activate the trap. You need one other character just to be there. And I think that because there's so many characters like that, it is not nearly as strong of a cast as it needed to be to really elevate to the next level. And the last flaw that I had with this film is that by this second half, when things really start going, it is so heavily reliant on reminding you about things that happened in the first film. There's so many throwbacks, I think it's kind of annoying. To the point where there is literally, and I'm not joking, there is literally a copy and paste scene taken directly from the first film. And I was like, why did you feel the need to want to do that? I think this film was at its strongest when it wasn't trying to be the first film. And I think that is the biggest flaw that a lot of these legacy type movies are trying to do for like classic properties, that they try so hard to try to be that classic film that it ends up hurting itself. And that very much is true here. I think when it was doing its own thing, it was at its strongest. Now, there were still a lot of great things about this film. Despite having a weak cast, I think that acting wise, everyone did a phenomenal job with their parts, with what little they were given to do. I thought that a lot of the special effects and the action set pieces were fantastic. They were thrilling. It had a lot of great music that went with it. It kept me entertained from beginning to end. Another thing that I also really liked was the callback to Harold Ramis. Now, as everyone knows, he sadly passed away a number of years ago, and there is a very, very incredible tribute to him when the older original Ghostbusters show up. It's no secret that the original Ghostbusters do show up, and there's a team up moment with Egon that is done in such a beautiful way. And it is probably the best tribute to a passing actor that I've ever seen in a film. To the point where I was getting emotional. I wasn't emotional to the point where I was going to cry, but it was just like, it kind of took me back to my childhood. It was just such a beautifully caught moment. And I also liked how this movie also kind of set the building blocks for us to have future Ghostbusters films. It's certainly, I hope it does not end here. There's just so much potential that is built here that they would be a fool not to want to continue on, because there's a lot of things that are set up that I think need to have a major payoff in future films. And I think that they certainly do have the potential to do that. So if any of you did happen to enjoy those first two films, I find it very difficult that you're not going to enjoy this film. So overall, if I had to give Ghostbusters Afterlife a rating, I think a respectable rating for me would be given an A minus. So yeah, I had a very, very good time seeing this film, and I would absolutely see it again in theaters. So those are my thoughts on Ghostbusters Afterlife. If you did happen to see this film, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. And if you liked my review, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep track of me in all my future movie and game reviews. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you all next time.